Hey there, I'm Margaret Reynolds, minus 35-year-old undercover police officer and single mom. My morning is a whirlwind as I rush around the kitchen trying to make breakfast for my son Tyler while simultaneously ironing my work shirt. Chaos. Definitely. But this is my version of normal. Tyler, you're going to be late for school again. I shout up the stairs. I hear a muffled groan in response. Mom, do I have to? Mr. Garrett's class is the worst. Sighing, I flip a slightly burnt pancake onto a plate. Yes, you have to go. Education is important, kiddo. Tyler trudges down the stairs, and I can't help but feel a pang of concern. He's been struggling lately, especially in English. I make a mental note to schedule a parent-teacher conference with Mr. Garrett. Here, eat up, I say, sliding the plate toward him. I've got a big case at work today, so Mrs. Thompson will be checking in on you later, okay? Tyler nods, his mouth already full of pancake. I ruffle his hair, grab my badge and gun, and tuck them discreetly into my purse. Just another day in the life of an undercover cop. At the station, I'm greeted by my partner, Detective James Foster. Morning, March. Ready to take down some bad guys? He teases, using that nickname I pretend to hate. I roll my eyes but smile. Always, James. What's the latest on the drug ring? Before he can answer, our supervisor, Captain Sarah Chen, calls us into her office. Reynolds, Foster, get in here. James and I exchange a look before heading in. Captain Chen wastes no time. We've got a lead on the Castro organization. Margaret, I need you to go undercover, infiltrate the ring, gather evidence, and we'll shut them down. My heart races with a mix of excitement and fear. This is what I've been training for, but it's dangerous, really dangerous. I'm on it, Captain. What's my cover? As we discuss the mission details, my thoughts drift to Tyler. This job could put him at risk, but in the long run, it's how I keep him safe. It's a delicate balance I have to walk every day. Later that evening, as I'm heating up leftovers, there's a knock at the door. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rosalie Thompson, stands there with a warm smile. Margaret, dear, I brought over some fresh cookies for Tyler, she says, her kind face beaming. Mrs. Thompson, you're a lifesaver, I say, ushering her in. I've got a big case coming up and I might need your help with Tyler more often. She pats my arm reassuringly. Of course, dear. That boy is like a grandson to me. You just focus on keeping our streets safe. If only she knew how dangerous things really were. As we chat, I notice a photo on her mantle of a young man I don't recognize. Oh, that's my nephew, Eric, Mrs. Thompson explains, noticing my gaze. He's been going through a rough time lately. I keep telling him to visit more often. I nod sympathetically, unaware that this seemingly innocent comment would soon take on a much deeper meaning. The next day, I walk into Westbrook High School, my heels clicking against the linoleum floor. The hallways are eerily quiet after hours, decorated with motivational posters and student artwork. I find Mr. Garrett's classroom and knock on the door. Come in, a gruff voice calls out. I step inside, forcing a smile. Hi, I'm Margaret Reynolds, Tyler's mom. We had a conference scheduled. Mr. Garrett looks up from his desk, his expression stern. Ah, yes, Tyler. Please have a seat. As I sit, he shuffles through some papers. Mrs. Reynolds, I'll be blunt. Tyler's performance has been disappointing. My concern deepens. What do you mean? He's always been a good student. Mr. Garrett's face hardens into a scowl. Good? He's been disruptive, inattentive, and his grades are slipping. I'm considering failing him for the semester. My cop instincts kicked in. Something wasn't right. Mr. Garrett's aggression felt off. His sudden shift made my skin prickle. Surely, there had to be another way to handle this. But before I could finish my thought, Garrett stood abruptly, his chair screeching across the floor. In a flash, he pulled a knife, pointing it directly at me. Listen here, you nosy. I reacted instantly, my training taking over. I grabbed his wrist, twisting it sharply. The knife clattered to the floor, and within seconds, I had him pinned against the whiteboard. What the hell is wrong with you? I hissed. Garrett's eyes were wide with fear, and something else. You don't understand. They'll ruin me if I don't do what they say. Your son, he needs to stay out of this. Who's they? I demanded, tightening my grip. But Garrett just shook his head, trembling. If you report this, I'll make sure Tyler fails. Just leave it alone, he stammered. I left the school, my mind racing. What had I just stumbled into? At home, I found Tyler sprawled on the couch, glued to his phone. Hey kiddo, we need to talk. Tyler barely looked up. Can it wait? I'm texting Jake. Jake, I asked, my mom instincts pinging. New friend. Tyler rolled his eyes. Yeah, Jake Holloway. His dad owns, like, half the businesses in town. Alarm bells went off in my head. Holloway, where had I heard that name before? Tyler, I said carefully, have you been skipping classes? His silence answered for him. Look at me, I said, firm but calm. Are you hanging out with Jake during school? His face flushed. So what if I am? It's not like anything interesting happens in class anyway. I took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. Tyler, has Jake offered you anything? Pills or... God, Mom. Tyler exploded. Just because you're a cop doesn't mean all my friends are criminals. He stormed off to his room, leaving me with a sinking feeling in my stomach. The next day, I met with James at our undercover apartment. Ready for this, Marge? He asked as I adjusted my wire. I nodded, my nerves in check, but barely. As ready as I'll ever be. We drove to the abandoned warehouse where the meeting was scheduled. I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding. A sleek black SUV pulled up, and out stepped Vincent Castro, the man we'd been tracking for months. Ah, you must be Maggie, he said smoothly, flashing a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. I've heard good things. As we talked business, I scanned the area, cataloging faces. But then I froze. Standing next to Castro was someone I recognized, Eric, Mrs. Thompson's nephew. Our eyes met, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought my cover was blown. But Eric just smiled and winked, as if we shared some secret. Welcome to the family, Maggie, he said with a grin. As I left the warehouse, my mind raced. Mr. Garrett's knife, Tyler's new friend, and now Eric's involvement, it all felt too connected. How deep did this corruption go, and how was it going to keep Tyler safe while unraveling it? I decided to start with Garrett. After some digging, I found a link. Richard Holloway, Jake's father. Holloway had discovered a skeleton in Garrett's closet, an old DUI that had been swept under the rug. He was using it to blackmail Garrett, forcing him to pressure students into buying drugs. You don't understand, Garrett said when I confronted him, his voice shaking. Holloway said he'd ruin me if I didn't help. He wants me to push the kids. My blood ran cold. And you agreed? Garrett's eyes were full of shame. He threatened my family. I didn't know what else to do. I left his house, my mind spinning. This was bigger than I'd thought. When I got home, I found Tyler sitting on the front steps, looking troubled. Hey kiddo. What's up? I asked, sitting beside him. Tyler hesitated, then blurted out, Mom, I need to tell you something. My heart raced. What is it? It's Jake, Tyler whispered. He's been trying to get me to try some pills. Says they'll help me focus in school. Relief and anger warred inside me as I pulled him into a hug. I'm so proud of you for telling me, Tyler. You did the right thing. As Tyler cried into my shoulder, I knew I had to end this, and fast. The next day, I was at another meeting with Castro's crew, this time in an old factory on the outskirts of town. The air was thick with tension and cigarette smoke. Castro was outlining a new distribution plan when the door opened. I turned, and my heart stopped. Walking in, looking as smug as ever, was Brian, my ex-husband and Tyler's father. Sorry I'm late, boys, Brian said, flashing the same charming smile that used to make my knees weak. Now, it just made me sick. I ducked my head, praying he wouldn't recognize me. As Brian's eyes swept the room, they lingered on me just a moment too long. I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't recognize me. But then, he winked. My stomach sank with the realization that Brian's sudden reappearance in Tyler's life wasn't a coincidence. He was part of Castro's plan, using his connection to our son as a way to lure in young recruits. As soon as the meeting was over, I rushed to our safe house to meet James. We've got a problem, I said, pacing the room. Brian's involved. And I think Captain Chen might be dirty. James' eyes widened. Chen, are you sure? I nodded grimly. It explains why our raids keep failing. Someone's been tipping off Castro. James ran a hand through his hair, worry written on his face. This is bad, Marge. If Chen's involved, who can we trust? I don't know, James, but we have to do something. They're targeting kids now, my kid. We'll figure this out, Marge, James said, determination flashing in his eyes. We have to. As I sat down, I replayed everything in my mind. Garrett, Holloway, Brian, Chen, betrayals at every turn. How had I missed it? And more importantly, how was I going to stop it? I thought of Tyler, of all the kids at his school, of Mrs. Thompson, still blissfully unaware that her nephew Eric was tangled up in this nightmare. Knew we couldn't wait any longer. We need a plan, I said, standing up, fire in my voice. Something big, something they won't see coming. James nodded, catching on. What did you have in mind? A grim smile crossed my face. We're going to take them all down, every last one of them. The day of the school fundraiser arrived, and with it, our chance to put an end to this. I adjusted my wire hidden beneath my blouse and took a deep breath. James gave me a reassuring nod as I stepped into the gymnasium, scanning the crowd. I spotted Mr. Garrett by the punch bowl, nervously fidgeting. I walked up to him. We need to talk, I said, guiding him to a quiet corner. I know everything, Garrett. The knife, the blackmail, all of it. Confess now or face the consequences. His face crumpled and he spilled everything. I knew the mics hidden on me were picking up every word. Across town, our sting operation was already in motion. Castro, Holloway, and their crew were walking right into our trap. Suddenly, a commotion caught my attention. My blood ran cold when I saw Brian dragging Tyler toward the exit. One step closer and the kid gets it. Brian snarled, holding Tyler tightly. I raised my hands, my mind racing. Brian, think about what you're doing. He's your son. He's my ticket out of here, Brian spat. I locked eyes with Tyler, silently willing him to remember the self-defense moves I'd taught him. In a flash, Tyler stomped on Brian's foot and elbowed him in the gut. I seized the moment, rushing forward and tackling Brian to the ground. As I cuffed him, I heard James's voice crackle through my earpiece. We got them, Marge, Castro, Holloway, the whole gang. And guess who we caught trying to warn them? Captain Chen. Relief flooded through me. It was over. In the days that followed, arrests were made, businesses seized, and justice was finally served. Mr. Garrett resigned and faced charges. Richard Holloway's empire crumbled. Castro, Eric, and the rest of their crew were behind bars. Captain Chen was dismissed and prosecuted. I was offered a promotion, but I turned it down. Instead, Tyler and I moved to a new neighborhood for a fresh start. Mrs. Thompson, bless her heart, followed us, still baking cookies and being the grandma Tyler needed. Months later, I stood on a stage, receiving an award for my undercover work. As I looked out at the audience, I saw Tyler grinning proudly beside James and Mrs. Thompson. We had been through hell, but we came out stronger. Holding up the award, I knew that the real victory wasn't this piece of metal. It was the safety we'd brought to our community, the trust I'd rebuilt with my son, and the toxic influences we'd removed from our lives. We were survivors, and our story was just beginning. Now, here's a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have confronted Brian alone, knowing he might use Tyler as a hostage? What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe for more intense tales of justice served.